Hi, this is Logan Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, how it is being impacted by the pandemic, and how the release of Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition will be impacted by the pandemic. Alright, so let's jump into this. So basically, we're in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right now. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition in this year, in 2021, it will be 7 years old. It came out in 2014. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is 7 years old. That's a big deal. That's a while, man. We've had Dungeons & Dragons 7th edition for a while, right? I'm sorry, it's Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for a while. So one of the things is, the question then rises, when would Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition have come out if we were dealing with when would we have gotten 6th edition if the pandemic had not come, right? So I believe generally, okay, so let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons and talk about where Dungeons & Dragons stands. It's really fascinating. How did Dungeons & Dragons as a tabletop role-playing game do according to other games? It did great, right? It came out in 1974. We are now 47. So we are now 47 years away from the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. That's a huge, huge accomplishment. And in 47 years, they've had 5 editions. That's great. You know why I could tell that? Well, Warhammer 40K. It is a tabletop role-playing game. It's also a miniatures war game. Warhammer 40K is very large and very profitable, okay? I don't think it's as big or as large or as profitable as Dungeons & Dragons, but it's a game that has similar scale and prominence, right? That game has nine editions, and it is like 8 to 10 years younger than D&D, right? And that is a brutal, grinding, like just dragging somebody over broken glass. New editions are tough. They're really tough for players. They're tough for dungeon man. They're tough for players. They're tough for game masters. They're tough for friendly local game shops. New editions are brutal for everybody. They are really rough. They're also rough for the company because the moment you announce that you have a new edition coming out, your books are trash. Well, nobody wants them, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm going to buy I'm going to drop $150 on PHB, DMG, MM, right? And they're going to be good for a year. And then the new stuff's going to be out, and nobody's going to play in my crusty old, version game. So they are really brutal, right? And so when would we have gotten a 6th edition if the pandemic didn't come? I think it would have been announced this year at Origins or at Gen Con, most likely Origins, or next year, right? Then there would have been a 2-year build cycle, right? I think the pandemic has pushed that 2 or 3 years. So we are going to get an extra 1 or 2 years of 5th edition simply because the pandemic happened, possibly 3 years. 1, 2, or 3 years extra of 5th edition because the pandemic happened, okay? Without it, I think they would have announced this year or next year, and then there would have been a 2-year build cycle. I think whenever they announce, it's going to be a 1 or 2 year build cycle, right? So I think the pandemic alone has given us 1 to 3 additional years of 5th edition. What does that mean? Well, Tasha's has changed the ball game massively. Tasha's is scope creep, and Tasha's is power creep, the likes of we have never seen before in Dungeons & Dragons. Honestly, to reach a power creep at year 7, that ain't D&D's fault, right? Like, people want books that matter. They want books that have cool things in them, and those cool things are going to dwarf the player's handbook. Nobody wants another book full of stuff that's less powerful than what's in the player's handbook, right? So Tasha's really delivers. There's a lot of cool stuff in Tasha's, and but it also means we're in power creep mode. Game balance is pretty much gone, right? So these extra 1, 2, 3 years in Dungeons and Dragons are going to be the Wild West. We're going to see a lot of craziness. Player power is going to go way up. Dungeon masters are going to have a much harder time dropping characters. And so it's going to get very crazy. Right? And I think that's okay. Like, 5th edition was a really super balanced, really great version. And we're going to have just, 2-3 years in the Wild West where there's just a crazy amount of power creep that happens, right? The way they'll fight that is they'll sell nonsense pre-gen adventure books like Candlekeep Mysteries that I thought Candlekeep Mysteries would not give additional power creep. It looks like there's a major possibility Candlekeep Mysteries will give additional power creep, and that will be if the combat wheelchair in Candlekeep Mysteries, or the whatever is the combat type wheelchair in there, if that doesn't require attunement, and it is a magic item that really should have required attunement, or even if it is required attunement, and Jennifer Kretschmer's new statement that it is punishing disabled players, disabled is her term, not mine, then even if it's attuned in the book, people may go with what the creator said in an official D&D interview, right? So that could be massive power creep. So we're just going to see a lot of power creep for about 1, 2, 3 years. I don't think that's a problem. I'm not a dungeon master that really struggles with balance. Whatever nonsense your player character can dream up, I can have 3 NPCs do the same thing. I don't know why any DM's like, oh, I can't control my play. Just weak DMs don't really know how to deal with a game that's out of balance. Like, we have more than enough power to balance a game. It's never been a problem. But there are a lot of DMs who really don't understand. They're not strong dungeon masters. It is a thing. It will get a little wild, right? I think that Wizards of the Coast has earned it. Like, they've earned this space of having this, like, crazy 1, 2, 3 years of just, like, really over-the-top, imbalanced power creep. And it's kind of, and here's the thing. A lot of companies are getting a COVID pass, are getting a pandemic pass. I think Wizards of the Coast is no less deserving of that pandemic pass, right? It's just going to be a strange time in the Wild West. There's going to be a lot of gunslingers, a lot of tumbleweeds. It's just going to get weird, right? And actually, I think I'm down for the weird. Like, they earned it. They brought out a great version. It was super balanced for a long time. It's going to get nuts. There's going to be a lot more power on the player side than the Dungeon Master side, but I think we can manage it. And honestly, I think Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro Gaming has done such a great job with D&D overall that I really don't have a problem with this 1 to 3 years of extra super high power creep that's coming. So I'm telling you now, you're going to be dealing with power creep from your players. And I'm also saying, I think it's okay. Wizards of the Coast is just like every other company out there. Everybody's struggling with this pandemic. It is absolutely brutal in America. And, and Hasbro Gaming isn't, like, actually, their business is really, in my opinion, been massively helped by it. But it's still going to adjust what you're able to do and how you're able to serve people, right? And so we're just going to go into this weird West, really crazy, over-the-top power gaming period of 5th edition, and I think that's okay. Like, it's totally understandable. That's my prediction. What do you think? Do you think pandemic guaranteed us 1 to 3 additional years on 5th edition, and that without the pandemic, 6th edition would have come 1 to 3 years earlier, right, and would have saved us from this power creep that we're about to see? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic. Please let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.